Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight for another quiet story from long ago. As the world outside begins to fade into silence, I invite you to slow down, take a deep breath, and let your thoughts drift into the softer corners of history. It's always comforting to imagine that somewhere, across oceans and time zones, people like you and I are sharing this very same moment. If you enjoy stories like this, where the past whispers through the calm of night, make sure to stay close. There are many more journeys waiting for us in the nights ahead. Tonight, I'm taking you inside the gilded prison of Versailles, to witness how a 14-year-old girl from Austria became the symbol of everything wrong with the French monarchy. You'll uncover the shocking truth behind the diamond necklace affair that destroyed her reputation, the real reasons the French people turned against her, and how a mother of four became the most famous victim of the guillotine. By the end of this story, you'll see that Marie Antoinette's tale isn't just about one woman's downfall, it's about the violent birth of the modern world. What makes her story even more haunting is that many of its forgotten details come straight from her personal letters, court records, and eyewitness accounts. They reveal a woman far more complex than the shallow, spoiled queen she's often portrayed to be. These aren't dry historical facts, they're glimpses into the mind of a woman who watched her world collapse piece by piece until nothing remained but the scaffold. So let's begin, with a moment that will change everything you thought you knew about Marie Antoinette. It's October 1770. On a small island in the Rhine River, exactly between Austria and France, a wooden pavilion stands alone in the mist. Inside, a terrified 14-year-old girl is stripped of every piece of clothing she owns. Her name is Maria Antonia, Archduchess of Austria, daughter of the powerful Empress Maria Theresa. But in a few minutes, she will no longer be Maria Antonia. She will become Marie Antoinette, Dauphine of France. This isn't just a marriage ceremony. It's a political exchange, a transaction meant to bind two empires together. According to the strange customs of royal unions, Marie is forbidden to bring a single thread of Austrian fabric with her across the border, not her clothes, not her jewelry, not even her undergarments. French attendants remove everything, even her hairpins, and replace them with French ones. Her beloved little dog, a spaniel named Mops, must stay behind. This ritual humiliation is meant to symbolize that she now belongs entirely to France. But what the French don't realize is that, in forcing her to abandon everything Austrian, they've planted the first seed of resentment. She will never truly feel French. The young Archduchess barely speaks the language. She's been raised in the warm, informal atmosphere of the Austrian court, where her mother, though an empress, acted as a firm but affectionate parent, not a distant ruler. Maria Antonia's childhood was filled with music, dance, and laughter. She played with her brothers and sisters, learned to sing, and was given just enough education to make polite conversation. No one thought to teach her about politics, diplomacy, or the delicate web of power her marriage was meant to secure. So as she steps into France, she has no idea that she's walking into the most rigid, most artificial court in all of Europe. Versailles is a world unto itself, a golden maze of rules, rituals, and silent rivalries. Every gesture, every glance, every word is measured by rank and protocol. There are rules for who can speak to whom, who can sit in whose presence, even who has the honor of handing the queen her chemise in the morning. As her carriage carries her toward Versailles, the road is lined with cheering crowds. But this is no spontaneous welcome. French officials have carefully staged everything to impress their new princess. Poor villagers have been paid to wear their best clothes and wave flags. The route has been chosen to show only the prettiest towns, the richest fields, and the grandest estates. What Marie doesn't see are the villages beyond the main road, where families of 10 live in one-room huts, sleeping beside their animals to keep warm. Peasants wear rags, go barefoot even in winter, and eat less than prisoners in modern jails. But Marie's golden carriage passes only through beauty and applause, carrying her deeper into a world built on illusion. When she finally arrives at Versailles, the sight takes her breath away. The palace sprawls across the landscape like a dream of gold and glass, over 2,000 rooms, more than 60,000 square meters of marble floors, and halls so vast that sound itself seems to echo in awe. The famous Hall of Mirrors stretches longer than a football field, glittering with 357 mirrors that each cost more than a peasant family would earn in a decade. Chandeliers sparkle above painted ceilings alive with angels and gods. But the true extravagance isn't in the walls or mirrors, it's in the lives of the people who live there. Every day at Versailles is a performance. The Queen's morning dressing ritual alone involves dozens of courtiers, each with a specific role determined by ancient hierarchy. If a princess of higher rank enters the room while the Queen is being dressed, the chemise must be passed from hand to hand, duchess to countess to baroness, until it reaches the proper noble. Even if Marie stands half-naked and shivering, the ritual must be obeyed. To outsiders, it seems absurd. But this is how the monarchy maintains control. A century earlier, Louis XIV, the Sun King, learned that bored nobles were dangerous ones. So he trapped them in a web of etiquette. Now, 100 years later, young Marie Antoinette finds herself at the center of this glittering, suffocating world, married to a prince who barely looks her in the eye. Her husband, Louis Auguste, the future Louis XVI, is shy, awkward, and overweight. He stammers when he speaks and blushes whenever anyone mentions love. He prefers tinkering with locks and keys to spending time with his new wife. Their wedding night is a quiet disaster, and their marriage remains unconsummated for 7 long years. The French court watches this with cruel fascination. Gossip spreads like wildfire. Some whisper that the Austrian princess is cold and frigid. Others say the Dauphin is impotent. And soon, these whispers spill beyond the palace walls, printed in pamphlets and passed around Paris like cheap entertainment. Inside the golden cage of Versailles, Marie Antoinette begins to feel trapped, lonely, and desperate to escape. Desperate to breathe beyond the walls of Versailles, Marie Antoinette begins searching for moments of freedom wherever she can find them. The endless ceremonies, the rigid rules, the constant watching eyes, all of it feels like a prison wrapped in gold. So she turns to pleasure, to distraction, to anything that makes her feel alive. She discovers gambling. Night after night, she sits at the card table surrounded by laughter and music, staying awake until dawn as fortunes rise and fall. She wagers sums that could feed hundreds of families, her hands trembling with excitement as she wins, and loses, and plays again. Then comes fashion. Marie becomes obsessed with gowns of shimmering silk and towering hairstyles powdered to perfection. Her dresses are so extravagant that each one costs more than a craftsman earns in a lifetime. She spends hours preparing for appearances, 3 hours just to construct a hairstyle, piled so high it scrapes the edge of doorframes. But it's not just vanity. It's escape. Within those silks and jewels, Marie feels like she controls something, anything, in a world where every other decision is made for her. And then, she meets Gabrielle de Polignac. The Duchess de Polignac is everything Marie is not: witty, confident, and effortlessly French. She knows how to navigate the treacherous waters of court life with a smile and a whisper. To Marie, she is both a friend and a lifeline, someone who offers warmth in a world of cold ritual. The two become inseparable. They laugh together, dine together, and retreat into private salons away from the suffocating formality of Versailles. But in a palace built on envy, closeness is dangerous. Rumors begin to swirl, whispers that the Queen and her beautiful friend share something deeper than friendship. In an age when royal marriages are political contracts, and real affection is rare, the idea of passionate female friendship is both strange and scandalous. Pamphlets begin to appear in Paris, filled with cruel caricatures and salacious tales. They accuse the queen of immorality, extravagance, even treason. Meanwhile, the Polignac family grows rich from the queen's generosity. Marie showers them with titles, estates, and pensions worth hundreds of thousands of livres every year. She builds them a private theatre at Versailles, where she and her closest friends perform plays together, sometimes even dressing as peasants or shepherdesses for amusement. To the struggling people of France, it's an insult. While they starve, their queen is playing make-believe in silks and diamonds. To Marie, it's the only place she feels like herself, a woman, not a symbol. Her private gatherings become wilder, her laughter louder, her debts higher. She begins hosting secret parties at the Petit Trianon, a small palace on the grounds of Versailles that once belonged to the king's mistress. Here, away from courtiers and spies, she can finally breathe. She dresses in simple gowns, tends to her gardens, and pretends, for a moment, to live a simpler life. But this illusion of simplicity enrages her subjects even more. To the people, Marie Antoinette is no longer a queen. She's a child playing at being poor. Political cartoonists in Paris have a field day, drawing her as a spoiled girl tending fake sheep while France starves. They call her Madame Deficit, the woman whose spending is driving the country into ruin. And then, at last, something changes. In 1778, Marie gives birth to her first child, a daughter named Marie Therese. The birth should be a moment of pure joy, but as with everything in her life, even motherhood becomes a performance. Dozens of courtiers crowd into the birthing room, watching as she struggles to breathe, to push, to survive. She nearly suffocates in the heat and noise before the doctors clear the chamber. When the child finally arrives, the queen weeps with exhaustion. Motherhood transforms her. For the first time, she feels purpose beyond vanity and ceremony. She becomes fiercely protective of her children, holding them close and defying the cold traditions that separate royal mothers from their offspring. She spends hours at the Petit Trianon, building a small private world where she can be a mother first and a queen second. But the more time she spends hidden away, the more distant she seems to her people. Her absences from court fuel fresh rumors, whispers of secret lovers, secret debts, and secret betrayals. Every smile, every letter, every expense is twisted into proof of her corruption. In 1781, when she gives birth to her son, Louis Joseph, she should finally have peace. She has given France a male heir, fulfilling her most sacred duty as queen. But instead of gratitude, she faces new cruelty. Pamphlets begin circulating across Paris claiming the boy is not the king's child, that Marie's lovers fathered him. The slander grows darker, more obscene, more personal. These attacks aren't random gossip. They are weapons, crafted by political enemies who know that to destroy the queen is to weaken the monarchy itself. They portray her as a liar, a foreign spy, a woman who corrupts all who touch her. The truth is simpler, and sadder. Marie Antoinette is a young mother trying to survive in a world built to break her. Every mistake she makes is magnified 100 times. Every kindness is dismissed as manipulation. Every luxury becomes evidence of guilt. Her laughter, once a sign of joy, now sounds to her people like mockery. And the stage is being set, for the scandal that will finally destroy her reputation forever. It begins, as so many tragedies do, with a jewel. A diamond necklace, so magnificent, so dazzling, that it could bankrupt a kingdom. Crafted years earlier for the former king's mistress, it was a masterpiece of gold and glitter, worth more than 2 million livres. When the mistress died, the jewelers tried to sell it to Queen Marie Antoinette. She refused. She said France had better ways to spend its money. But her refusal didn't stop the whispers. Years later, a cunning woman named Jeanne de la Motte saw an opportunity. A liar, a thief, and a master of manipulation, she wove a web of deception that would ensnare the queen herself. Jeanne claimed to be close to Marie Antoinette, claimed she could speak to her in secret, that the queen wanted the necklace after all, but wished to buy it discreetly. Her plan needed a fool, and she found one. Cardinal de Rohan, once a powerful man at court, desperate to regain the queen's favor after years of disgrace. Jeanne told him that the queen wanted his help in purchasing the necklace in secret, and she showed him forged letters written in the queen's name. To seal the illusion, Jeanne even arranged a midnight meeting in the gardens of Versailles. There, under moonlight, a woman dressed as Marie Antoinette appeared. She handed the cardinal a rose and whispered forgiveness. The cardinal believed every word. But the woman was no queen. She was a prostitute dressed in royal costume. The cardinal purchased the necklace, believing it was for Marie Antoinette. Jeanne took it, sold the diamonds piece by piece, and vanished into the shadows. When the deception was exposed, the scandal exploded across France like a storm. Newspapers, pamphlets, and gossip filled every salon. People didn't care that the queen had nothing to do with it, they wanted to believe she was guilty. They called it the affair of the diamond necklace, but it was never about jewelry. It was about power. It was about rage. When the case went to trial, the cardinal was acquitted. Jeanne was branded and imprisoned. And Marie Antoinette, though innocent, was publicly humiliated. Crowds jeered her name in the streets. The people shouted that their Austrian queen had spent a fortune while their children starved. From that moment on, her reputation was beyond saving. In the salons of Paris, her face became the face of corruption. The pamphlets depicted her in obscene cartoons, calling her the Austrian whore, mocking her accent, her spending, her vanity. Her laughter, her silks, her every word became evidence of treason. And yet, behind the mirrors of Versailles, she was breaking. Her children were sick. Her marriage was cold. Her enemies were closing in. And beyond the gilded gates, revolution was rising. The French people no longer whispered, they shouted. Bread prices soared. Starvation spread. Riots turned to violence. The monarchy's wealth was now seen not as divine right, but as theft. Louis XVI, timid and uncertain, turned to his wife for strength. But she, too, was lost in a storm she couldn't control. They tried to make reforms, to calm the rage of the people, but it was too late. The fire had already been lit. By 1789, the streets of Paris were filled with fury. The Bastille was stormed. The old order crumbled. And as the sound of revolution echoed through the land, Marie Antoinette, still surrounded by silk and chandeliers, began to hear something she had never heard before. It's October, 1789. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and hunger. Thousands of women are marching from Paris to Versailles, angry, desperate, carrying knives, pitchforks, and banners. Their children are starving, their husbands are unemployed, and they blame the woman behind the golden gates. They are chanting one name, Marie Antoinette. Inside the palace, the queen hears the roar long before she sees the crowd. She runs to the window, her heart pounding, and for the first time, she feels real fear, not the gossip, not the rumors, but the raw, burning hatred of her people. By dawn, the mob breaks through the gates. The royal guards are slaughtered. The marble halls echo with screams. The queen is forced from her bed, half-dressed, and rushed through secret corridors with her children in her arms. They find refuge with the king, but the crowd demands to see her. The queen. Bring us the queen, they shout. So she steps out onto the balcony. Her face pale, her hair disheveled, she stands before thousands of furious Parisians. Muskets are aimed at her. Stones are thrown. And then, silence. Marie Antoinette does not bow. She does not speak. She simply stands there, proud and trembling, her eyes meeting theirs. For a moment, even her enemies are struck by her composure. Some women lower their weapons. Others weep. But the verdict has already been decided. Versailles is no longer a palace. It's a prison. The royal family is taken from their golden home and marched to Paris. The people cheer as they pass, dragging the carriage through mud and rain. For hours, the queen sits beside her husband and children, staring out at faces that once adored her. Now they spit at her carriage wheels. Their new home is the Tuileries Palace, a cold, dark building in the heart of Paris. Guards watch their every move. Letters are intercepted. Food is rationed. And at night, the queen can hear the chants from outside the walls, songs mocking her name, calling for her death. Still, she tries to hold on. She teaches her children lessons, reads them stories, and writes desperate letters to foreign monarchs, begging for help. But the world has turned against her. Austria and France are at war. Her own family abroad sees her as a liability, not a queen. Every day, the revolution grows bolder. The royal guards are replaced by soldiers of the National Assembly. The king's authority fades until he is little more than a prisoner wearing a crown. Then, in 1791, there's a chance, a plan to escape. A loyal friend arranges everything: forged papers, disguises, a carriage waiting in the night. The queen dresses as a governess, the king as her servant. They slip out of the palace with their children, hearts racing, wheels turning fast through the sleeping countryside. But freedom never comes easily to the fallen. At a small town called Varennes, they are recognized. The alarm is raised. Revolutionaries surround the carriage before dawn. The king's passport is torn apart, the queen's disguise stripped away, and the royal family is dragged back to Paris under guard. When they arrive, the crowd does not cheer this time. They laugh. They jeer. They call them traitors. And from that moment on, there is no more illusion of power. The monarchy still exists in name, but its heart has stopped beating. The king and queen are prisoners in their own country. Their portraits are defaced. Their friends are arrested. Their supporters vanish or flee. And Marie Antoinette, once the radiant rose of Versailles, begins to fade. Her face grows thin. Her hair turns gray. The laughter that once filled the halls of the Petit Trianon is gone. She spends her days writing letters to her sister, to her children, to God. She knows the world outside is changing forever, but she still hopes that somehow, her family will survive this madness. But hope is a fragile thing in a revolution. And soon, it will be crushed beneath the blade of history. The palace lights are gone now. The mirrors, the music, the laughter, all gone. It is 1793, and the revolution has consumed everything. The king is no longer king. Louis XVI, once ruler of France by divine right, now stands in a crowded courtroom surrounded by men who once bowed before him. His face is calm, but his eyes betray the truth. He knows how this story ends. The verdict comes swiftly: guilty of treason. And the sentence, death. On a cold January morning, the king is led to the guillotine in the Place de la Révolution. Thousands gather to watch. Drums roll. The blade falls. Marie Antoinette, now alone, hears the news in her cell. She does not scream. She does not faint. She simply closes her eyes and whispers a prayer for his soul. From that moment, she is no longer a queen. She is prisoner 280. Her new home is the conciergerie, a stone fortress on the banks of the Seine. The walls are damp, the air thick with rot. She sleeps on straw. Guards watch her even as she eats, even as she prays. Her children are torn away from her. Her young son, Louis Charles, is taken to another cell, where he will be beaten and starved until he no longer remembers his own name. Marie writes letters in the dark, her handwriting trembling, her tears staining the paper. I forgive all my enemies, she writes, and I pray that my death will bring peace to France. But peace is a word the revolution no longer understands. In October, she is brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. The courtroom is packed, jeering crowds, furious voices, the smell of sweat and vengeance. The charges are endless: conspiracy, treason, corruption. They accuse her of everything imaginable, even of crimes too cruel to repeat. She stands there, pale and thin, her white hair cut short, wearing a simple black dress. When the prosecutor accuses her of abusing her own son, she finally speaks. Her voice breaks through the courtroom. I appeal to all mothers here, but the trial is a performance, and the ending is already written. She is found guilty. Sentenced to death. On the morning of October 16, 1793, Marie Antoinette wakes before dawn. She kneels in her cell and prays. Then, calmly, she dresses herself, not in silk or velvet, but in a plain white gown. She ties her hair back, refusing to let vanity accompany her to the grave. When the guards arrive, she does not cry. She steps into the waiting cart with dignity. The streets of Paris are lined with people, thousands of them, cheering, cursing, throwing insults. Some throw stones. Others watch in silence. As the cart moves through the city, she looks up at the sky, gray, endless, almost kind. She does not speak. Only once does she stumble, when she steps on the executioner's foot and whispers, "Pardon me, sir, I did not mean to." At noon, she climbs the steps to the guillotine. The crowd roars. Drums roll. The blade gleams in the light. And as the executioner lifts her hair, the last queen of France closes her eyes. A moment of stillness. A breath. Then the blade falls. The sound echoes across the square, sharp and final. The crowd erupts in triumph, but among the cheers, there is an unease, a whisper that something greater has died with her. Marie Antoinette is gone. The revolution has claimed its queen. But history would not forget her. In time, the fury would fade, the blood would dry, and the story of the young Austrian girl who became the most hated woman in France would transform into something else, a tragedy, a warning, a legend. They once called her Madame Deficit. They mocked her voice, her dresses, her laughter. But in the end, all that remained was a woman. A wife, a mother, and a queen. Who met death with courage and silence. And that silence still echoes, even now. Through the golden halls of Versailles. Through the pages of history. Through the hearts of all who have ever been loved, and lost. In the name of a crown, the crowd slowly begins to scatter. The drums fall silent. The guillotine stands still against the fading sky. And there, In that silence, the last breath of a queen lingers. The woman they once mocked for her laughter, her silks, her pride, now lies beneath the cold Parisian sky. Her story, written in diamonds and blood, becomes the final chapter of a dying world. The revolution has won. The monarchy is gone. But the truth remains, Marie Antoinette was never the monster they painted her to be. She was a child born into power, trapped inside a cage of gold, fighting to find meaning in a world built on illusion. History remembered her for her words, words she never said. Let them eat cake. A lie that lived longer than she did. Yet, in her final hour, there was no arrogance, no vanity, only dignity. A woman who had lost everything, her home, her husband, her children, still walked to her death with her head held high. And maybe that's her true legacy. Not the diamonds. Not the scandals. Not the throne. But the quiet strength of a woman who faced hatred with grace. And met death with courage. Centuries have passed, and the echoes of her footsteps still whisper through the empty halls of Versailles. The mirrors still reflect her face, the gardens still remember her laughter. Marie Antoinette's story is not just the fall of a queen, it's the story of how beauty can become burden, how power can become prison, and how even the brightest crown can cast the darkest shadow. Because in the end, she was never just royalty. She was human. And her tragedy belongs to all of us. And so, as the curtain falls on Marie Antoinette's world, we're left with a question that still echoes through time: was she the villain they claimed, or the victim of a world too cruel to understand her? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, in the soft heartbeat of a woman who never asked to be a symbol, who never wanted to wear a crown of gold that would one day lead her to the blade. Her life reminds us that history is not written by those who lived it, but by those who survived it. In the end, Marie Antoinette's story is not just about the fall of a queen, it's about the fall of innocence, the silence after the music ends, and the price we pay when beauty, power, and humanity collide. And so, as the final echo of her story fades into the night, we're left with the quiet truth: Marie Antoinette was never just a queen. She was a dreamer, a daughter, a mother, and a prisoner of a world that mistook beauty for sin. Her fall wasn't only the end of a monarchy, it was the birth of a new age, where the old world crumbled, and the modern one began to breathe. If this story moved you, take a moment to stay with us a little longer. There are countless more untold stories waiting, of love, loss, power, and fate. You're listening to Lyfory, where every night we bring history's forgotten souls back to life, one voice, one story at a time. So before you drift away into sleep, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because tomorrow night, another voice from the past will be waiting for you. Until then, rest well, dream deep. And remember, even queens fall silent, but their stories never truly die.